Hello everyone, welcome to night 42, what a good number that is, of the Orphan Tales live reading series. It's Sunday night, that strangest and most melancholy of all nights, and with everything starting to open up for no good reason whatsoever, but that the president's bored. It is particularly melancholy indeed. We are really coming up close to the end of this book here. Just over 30 pages left to go. And I'm really, I know I said the other day that I was going to just start the second book right away, but I'm really, I'm a little on the fence about whether I'm going to do that. This has been amazing, but it's also been a lot. It's been a lot to do this every night. And I just have a feeling that maybe we should save it for when we're all quarantined again in September. And maybe that's the better plan. So I'm not sure. I haven't decided one way or another yet. I will certainly take a few days off either way and think about it. I also have a book that I'm desperately trying to finish, and being able to sort of work through the night without stopping to put on a whole bunch of makeup and be on camera would probably be helpful. Maybe we'll switch to weekly. I just don't know what the right thing to do is. So I'm sort of noodling it over in my head. And I'll let you know what I decide. Please feel free to tell me what you think. So all that said, let's do our intro nonsense so we can get into it. As always, this is not an audiobook of the Orphan's Tales. It is a play, a one-woman show. Very limited engagement. You can find music based on these books at sjtucker.com. You can buy these books anywhere that books are sold, but I would prefer, if you are taking advice, that you buy them from your local independent bookseller's web portal. Most of them are still taking orders, just the same as always. If you would like to support my local independent bookseller, they're printbookstore.com. You can catch up with the archive any nights you might have missed at Cat Valenti Live on YouTube. And that will stay up as long as the internet doth shine. You can find me on Twitter at Cat Valenti. You can find me on Patreon and subscribe to my Patreon at Cat Valenti and help us keep things going and keep the lights on over here. There'll be some good rewards going up in the next week or so. And you can ask me questions after the reading is over, but do try to think of them while I'm reading so that there's not a lot of dead air while I sit awkwardly with my drink, which I have remembered tonight to make myself, waiting for questions. And you can, if you like, put something in my tip jar. As I said, it's a lot to put these together for you every night. It's been an extraordinary experience, but it has also been a tremendous amount of work. These are absolutely free. It has been from the beginning my gift to you. But as you may imagine, times are terrible for freelancers and artists of all stripes, and if you were moved to put something in the witch's hat, it would be deeply appreciated. And I will thank anybody who does on the next stream. And my day has been so full of child. There was somebody last night, and I have forgotten their name, so I will thank them on the next stream. I'm very sorry about that. My brain is not what it should be today. The tip jar is on my Instagram profile, my YouTube profile, and on my website, which is catherinemvalenti.com. Yeah, I mean, maybe we can do once a week, but longer readings. That's definitely a possibility. Might be nice to have a night, a dedicated night. That might be cool. And that might branch out into reading other books as well. That's definitely a possibility. I will think long and hard on it, but that sounds kind of good to me. So maybe you guys just have all the answers. Oh, thank you. Well, I just got out of the shower. So thank you for saying my hair looks great. It does help if you wash it. I'm not going to say that that's the secret, but occasionally washing it. I am one of those weird people who washes my hair once a week, but my hair has been so much better since I started doing that and stopped just, stripping it every day. So today was hair washing day. So thank you for saying my hair looks nice. That is a lovely thing to hear. Oh, I'm so glad you got a copy of book 2 for your birthday. That's fantastic. It's, I get royalties off of these books. It's, all these years later, and it's wonderful that people are still buying them, and I'm excited when people get a chance to read them for realsies in real life and not just listening to me. So yeah, all that being said, let's get back into it. I always think I have lipstick on my teeth. That's my behind the scenes thing. I always think, secretly somehow there's lipstick on my teeth. Because I'm wearing real lipstick for these and not the sort of matte stay-on lipsticks that I do for events. Because I don't need to have lipstick on for the entire rest of the night after this. So I'm convinced, I'm always convinced it's on my teeth. All right. As Saint McConaughey would say. Let's do this thing. The Magyars Tale continued. The beast maid caressed the rail of her ship tenderly. No one wants this ship, just as no one wanted me. They say I use no sails, but lash the ghosts of the crew to the mast and let the moon fill them up like wind. This ship is mine. I know it like my own body, and I am not sorry for what I've done. That is what piracy is, I suppose. I am not a maiden anymore, and I am glad to be done with that sorry state. I washed it off in blood and ocean. No one troubles me, and I do not trouble them. Well, that's a fish story, and no mistake, I guffawed. My boys snorted derision along with their mistress, clapping each other on the back. We have a real red-handed villain on our hands, boys. 100 men at one blow. Magadan smiled patiently. Not a villain, not a witch or a maiden. A captain, which is a little like being all three. But believe what you will, when a mermaid mocks a monster for telling a story too fantastic to swallow, who is to say which is more ridiculous? I purpled, swelling up with rage like an overripe plum. I am not a mermaid. Mermaids are skinny little fops with shells to cover their tiny tits. Mermaids do nothing but sit around on rocks, staring into mirrors and teasing ships to their doom. Perfectly good ships, galleons even. Wasteful milksops, a lot of them. You couldn't build half a brain if you had the whole race on a slab. I'm a Magyar. I could crush your skull with my hands and drink this rat town under the table afterwards. And if I wanted to kill myself a passel of sailors, I'd bloody well do it with cannon, saber, and a fist in the teeth, not by batting my damn eyelashes. You'd be wise to remember it, Maggie, my love. And if we see a mermaid on our jaunt across the high seas, the best thing for all of us would be to let Sheepshank here put an arrow through her giggling head. With that, I gave her a good splash with my tail and ordered the boys to take me aboard. We've got a lovely illustration here. Now, we're a week on the waves, and Turk's Head vomiting over the side every morning like a fisherman throwing chum to the whales. We're nothing unusual that I could see. The ocean's blue no matter the day or the tide. And if I loved the great salt thing enough to describe it, I'd love it enough to swim in it. Do you get me? Maggie, for her part, sailed that ship like nothing I've seen. My boys are no layabouts when it comes to crewing a fine ship. I bought them at a bargain from the Ajanab fleet when they were so poor they couldn't buy splinters. But she wouldn't hear of it, running up and down that deck like a dervish. You wouldn't have thought anybody could man a ship that size all on their own, but Magadan did it, and no lie. Which is how it happened that Turk's Head was the one to sight the monster first, while chucking his chum at dawn for the 12th day. Came spluttering up to my tub like a baby who's discovered his thumbs. Dragged the old barrel screeching across the deck, spilling my brine everywhere so that I could stare over the rail and see horribly the water breaking over a shell so enormous that at first I thought we'd hit land. It was difficult to clap an eye on, a shell like a turtle rising up, but the color of the sea itself, so it seemed like a wave or a reef, but too impossibly huge to be alive. Turk's Head was crying, babbling it was going to eat us, but I couldn't see ahead to the thing at all. It was nothing but a shell, rising and rising, water running off its back, slick tiles of shiny blue and black and green repeating over and over like a puzzle. The ship was caught in a royal of froth and foam, the sea rushing into us as it rushed away from the beast. "Leviathan," whispered Sheepshank, and he mumbled a prayer so I could not hear. Boys know I don't approve of their bloody damn stars. Magadan cried out to us, dashing from sail to sail, fighting to keep us aright. "It's the Ignatius. Don't you read books? That's not even half its girth, you see. It can swallow us up and not even feel the prick of the mast in its gullet. Man those lines, sheep, or we feed the monster." The boys were so glad of something to do they fell over themselves trying to get to that flapping jib first. I just watched, frozen as a side of seal meat. The thing was still rising, so high now it cast its shadow over us. I shivered in the sudden cold. Goosebumps stood out green and blue on my arms, and soon there weren't no sea at all, only the ugly black thing growing like a dead sun. I looked hard for the head, searched like a fish prodding through coral for a meal, the littlest break in the giant shell. Sheepshank screamed. I never heard my poor boy scream. I protect him so he don't have to. An awful keening sound like an iron sawing through iron, and suddenly the waves broke over the head, a whale's head, with a mouth that never ended. It stretched all smiles around and around until it seemed it would split the monster's skull with long, yellow-white curtains of baleen gleaming sickly. Its eye was the color of an old corpse. Stink wafted out like rancid meat and soiled cabbage. As soon as it broke the salt scrim, Turk's head unlatched one of the thick-handled harpoons hanging on the sides of the ship and hurled it with all his not inconsiderable strength toward the mouth of the Ignatius. It glanced off, like a hanky thrown at an iron door. Magadan sighed heavily as if she expected it. Her sad little ship was losing her battle with the wind and sliding toward the black blot of the monster. Her face, such a pretty face, really, in spite of everything, settled into a grimace, and though her scaly arms did not loosen on the wheel, I saw her despair. The Ignatius saw nothing. It only began the long opening of its mouth. Gray water rushed in, a wave crashing with a terrible noise like palaces falling, and in the dark of its throat, it yawned, pulling us in. No matter how Maggie pulled the wheel to swing us round, no matter how trim the lads kept the sails, we spiraled closer and closer to the sloshing stomach of the sea beast. "Sheepshank, love," I cried, "your mistress is dumb as a team of cows. Bring me the harpoons." Always obedient, my sheep gathered up an armful of spears and tipped them into my tub. Swear if my tits weren't screwed on, I'd have left him in a bar 10 years ago. I grinned coyly up at his tattooed face. "Did I ever show you my gland, sweetheart? I don't show it to just anyone, but times being what they are." I lifted one of my heavy breasts and passed the sharp tip of the harpoon across the skin beneath. It parted, and a green ooze dribbled out onto my belly. Magyar, unlike those cretins called mermaids, are not defenseless dolls. We have sacks of poison in our chests, just like squid ink. I stuck my hands in the mess of bubbling slime and told the boys and the beast girl to do the same. Quickly the four of us dipped the harpoons in my fluids and loaded Turk's head with the sopping sticks. He ran up to the prow, positively white with nausea, and hurled the first directly into the Ignatius' maw. It disappeared, useless as a limp sailor. He tried again, and again it vanished into the black. Again the monster didn't seem to grasp that it had swallowed enough Magyar oil to kill a herd of horses. Sheepshank sunk to the deck of the ship and began to cry. But Magadan, captain among captains, that one. She grabbed up the bundle of harpoons and kissed me smash on the forehead. "See, my ship gets home," she said, and winked at me. "The ship deserves a harbor, whatever happens to her sailors." "Wait, if anyone's to go overboard, it ought to be the lady with the tail, don't you think? It's not that I wanted to leap off into the blue, you understand, but I thought it was proper to offer." Magadan laughed and thumped her wolf's tail against the rail. "Absolutely," she yelled. And with that, she leapt overboard, her frog's feet kicking up, bright green in the dull water. She swept into the monster's mouth quicker than oil running downhill in summer, and as she passed the wall of baleen, she twisted, rode the swell of the sea, and thrust her spears into the roof of its mouth. The Ignatius roared in rage, and the sound bit my ears like rusty knives scraping on the drum. It shook and pitched, the shell bulging bladder full, and all in a rush the hideous thing vomited, spewing a flood of gold coins onto the ship's deck, tearing through its wood like cannon fire. The beast kept up its retching, showering the ocean with gold, and I saw Magyars Tale lift up soggily once, twice, before she disappeared into the black. The pale girl's tale continued. Bloody ship was full of holes by then, of course, but full of gold, too. We steered out while the monster went under again, and good thing we did. When the top of its shell sunk at the last, the sea washed over it like a flood. We were almost caught. But my tub was at the wheel, and the boys were patching holes for all they were worth, and we limped back into Muron Port with full purses. Not just gold, but antiques. Those are worth 5 times what plain gold dime is. I'm only sorry I never got to see tax youngsters and her pies. Grog looked sad for a moment, drained her tankard, and was all smiles again, her yellow teeth garish and bright. That's a tale worth a meal, Evie, wouldn't you say? But Sigurd's face had gone black and white at the same time, desire and hope and despair flitting like clouds across it. You saw the Ignatius. You lost your captain to it. Is this one deaf or feeble, Ev? Hasn't she heard what I said? Don't she got her hands full of dead men's gold? Do you remember where, you soused dog? Sigurd's eyes blazed like a fire in midwinter. Could you find the place again? Grog looked at the woman pityingly. She ran her hands through her emerald hair, coiffing the ratted heap. I know you're not from these parts, dearie, but you do see the tale, right? You do grasp the concept of a tale. It's for swimming and all. I may not like to dip my tender parts in it, but no one knows the sea like a Magyar. Of course I could find it again. But I've no mind to. I consider it a gift I escaped with full pockets, and I'm not about to go skipping about looking for a nice big mouth to jump into. Now go fill up my cup, Evind, and keep your woman nice and quiet while the body's having a drink. Snow, unseen by all as always, had crept closer to the wide tub of brine and pulled a knife from the bar into her thin hands. She leapt like a feral cat into the lip of the tub and seized Grog by a tuft of bottle green hair. Take us, she hissed. Take us to the monster, or I'll cut your throat. Snow, Sigrid gasped. What's gone into you? If anyone's going to threaten the sea cow, it'll be me. Sigrid, Snow pleaded, you know what's out there. You've spent all this time telling me about St. Sigrid. You think I'll let a chance to be in that story, to be part of it, slide by? Didn't you give 8 years to a tower because a woman told you a story you loved? All I want is a few days at sea. You know it was you in the song. But couldn't it have been me, too? An orphan will find her. I'm an orphan if you ever knew one. You've waited all these years to find the Ignatius. And you're going to let this greasy old thing stop us. Let me come with you. Let me help you find her. And let me cut this foul-smelling fish if she won't help us. Snow pressed the knife into the rolls of fat around Grog's neck, and the Magyar squealed helplessly. Fanatics, she screeched. I tell you, there's nothing so dangerous in the world as fanatics. Sheepshank, Turk's Head, snap this one in half for me. The great hulks of men leapt forward to pummel the pale child, but Evind stopped them with a glance. Touch her, and I'll bash mistress's face in with a bottle of rum, he growled. Sigrid gave him a grateful nod. All right, I'll take you there, you stinking dogs. You used to run a fair bar, Evind, but look at you now, groveling before some fat wench and her brat. Snow released the Magyar's head and climbed nimbly down from the tub brim. Grog glared at her and spat out a hunk of green phlegm which spattered across Snow's back. Sigrid smiled wanly and wiped it off. Thank you, Snow said stiffly. Mistress, came a soft, high voice. Turk's Head had crept forward and was kneeling at the side of the tub, pawing Grog like a pup. Not the sea again. Not the boat. Please, my stomach. Not the sea again, agreed Sheepshank. We've had enough. It's out there, waiting. We'll wait here for you. We love you. But we won't face the monster again. Grog rolled her eyes. Well, who's going to carry my tub, then? That waste of a girl couldn't lift a mug of rum. Evind coughed, spat, and gave the bar an affectionate swipe with his rag. I'll go with you and carry your can of soup, you old sturgeon. Ain't that sweet of you, precious? But I go for Sigrid, not for you. He grumbled, fixed his drooping eyes on the older woman. Fine. Everyone is so bloody loyal, it stinks. Fanatics give me heartburn. Maggie's ship lashed at the dock. Be sure you get a firm grip. I don't fancy spilling out on the street like a bucket of bluegill. And so Sigrid, Snow, and Eyvind wrapped themselves in wool and readied themselves to go to sea. Sheepshank and Turk's Head were given the back room to sleep in, and the other customers gently shooed to the door. "Bring a barrel of rum," screeched the green-haired Magyar. "We'll want it, mark my words." In the garden. "If you're a smart girl, you'll get out now," came the blacksmith's voice like a hot iron through the silk night. The girl jumped up immediately, accustomed to quick escape, darting away from the blacksmith's shadow. She hardly looked at the boy as she dodged the horse's legs and tin buckets, nimbly bounding out of the stable doors as the first drops of light seeped out of the east. But though she found him safe and sleeping where she left him, Dinarzade kept the boy by her during the day, a torture worse than any she had yet devised, as he was made to copy her every action, and his fingers grew red and swollen from pinpricks, then black from ink stains, then blue with costly dyes. He could not do any of it properly, and so he was made to burn with shame under the disapproving stares of so many women. By evening, no matter how much he might wish to escape the garden, he was as exhausted as a deer which has stayed ahead of the hounds by only the smallest of steps. Dinarzade insisted he sleep near her as well, and for once he did not protest, but fell onto the bed, sore and ashamed. Past midnight, the boy woke to a pair of dark eyes peering through the stone arch, which was hung with a soft violet gauze, thin as secrets. Dinarzade lay still on her bed, covered in white furs, and the boy thought, not for the first time, that when she did not speak or move, she was beautiful. Her smoky black hair spread over the bed like a river of shadow, and her skin caught the moonlight just so. Her slim, elegant hands curled over the bronze keys which unlocked the bedchamber's proper door, and her breathing was slow and sweet as a flute. The boy lay on a smaller, spare bed, and his own dark hair tangled as though he had run his hands through it many times in anger. His eyes were wide and open, staring at the low window, and the girl's dear poised form. He crept silently, a spider in a well, until he reached the windowsill and drew aside the lavender veils. Dinarzade's breathing continued, slow and rhythmic as a dance. "You came," he whispered. "How do you always find me?" The girl smiled. "Magic," she whispered. "After all, I am a demon. You always come to the window. You come to find me and carry me away. That is not what girls are supposed to do. It's what princes do in all the stories. This is not that kind of story." The boy tried not to look as glad as he was, a rabbit who knows that he will be caught, but cannot help devouring the carrot. He wished fervently that he could find her and carry her off like a proper prince, but she was like air streaming through silk, and he could not touch her at all. They stood for a moment separated by the low stone sill. "I will be very quiet," she murmured, "so as not to wake your sister." She settled outside the window on the deep, dewy grass and closed her eyes. When the Beast Maiden's ship had been bounding through the waves like a lioness through the grass for 3 days with Grog at the wheel, since no one would move her tub from that post, Eyvind found himself below decks with Sigrid, sharing a meager supper of seal fat and hard bread. They did not see Snow creep in behind them, as eager to hear their talks as a child who spies upon their parents. And we will pick up there tomorrow with the Pale Girl's Tale continued. And we're just into the late 20s pages left now. Not far at all. So it'll be, I guess, we'll finish up on Tuesday night. So do I ever have to wrestle with writer's block? I do. Yeah, absolutely. It's more in the last 2 years than I ever have before. I found it really hard to work while I was pregnant and unmedicated, but also it turns out, I guess I just didn't really understand that pregnancy is a mental thing as much as it's a physical thing, and I just found it very, very difficult to work. And then had my maternity leave and, all of that, and then once I was back, it just, my brain wasn't there, and that was very hard. And it's hardly it's not the first time that I've had writer's block, but it's the first time it's been that severe. And so, yeah, I do. It can be very difficult. And I mean, there's writer's block that's like, oh, I can't figure out how this plot point should go. And there's writer's block where like, oh, I don't have any ideas for this. And there's writer's block where it's just like, I have nothing. Those are very different levels of severity. The first one I can fix by switching to another project or taking a couple of days to think it through. The second one is a little harder, but I can usually come up with an idea for a project even if I seem to have nothing. And sometimes it's a far better idea than I would have had had I not been asked to do that project. The Future is Blue was one of those. No One Dies in Nowhere, which is up on Serial Box right now, so if you want to listen to it. Those were stories that came very hard. Both the premise for it and God, I've had novels come easier than No One Dies in Nowhere, but I'm very proud of them in the end. And the I Have Nothing is only something that sort of happened when I was pregnant, and I'm still kind of dealing with in some ways, but I'm coming out of it, and I'm close to the end of this book that I'm writing, and as time has gone by, I've managed to claw some of my mental space back from having had a child. It's a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. Just out of curiosity, it doesn't seem you were very active on Instagram before this past winter. Was there any particular reason I decided to come back to it? I wasn't. I still do find it irritating that I have to, just always having to have a photo. I feel awesome about how I look, and so I'm not a big selfie person. I also, there's stuff about the UI on Instagram that just bothers me, retweeting or sharing things is not nearly as intuitive or easy. There's not a huge commenting culture. It's not my favorite platform in any way. And I did this here because, it's Instagram, and, why not sort of open up a new platform? But also because Instagram Live is super easy. Easier than a lot of other live streaming platforms, and YouTube actually locks down a lot of its features to subscriber count. So I could have done this on YouTube if I had 1,000 subscribers, but I can't just do this easy live stream straight from my phone from YouTube because I don't have 1,000 subscribers. So this was easily the easiest way for me to do something like this. And I had done it with Serial Box Pub the week before this started for a reading they wanted me to do. And I was like, oh, that was so easy. I can totally do this for the Orphan Tales thing I've been planning. And it is just, it's so idiot-proof and plug and play, except for in the beginning, the archiving feature, which they have since revamped, and it's much better now. And you can just go back into my profile and see the videos. But we've archived them all on YouTube, and that is a good thing. But I do like Instagram. I do try to stay a little bit away from the Facebook ecosystem as much as I can, and I'm much more about the words than I am about the pictures. But leave no stone unturned, and I like Twitter a lot better, but Twitter doesn't even come close to having a feature like this, and Instagram Live is just a great feature that allows me to essentially make a small television show for free every night. And unfortunately, YouTube would prefer me to already have a large audience before allowing me to do that. Here we go. Have I ever had to scrap a project entirely? Oh, absolutely. There are a couple of pretty significant projects that I, at the time, really believed in that are just graveyards on my hard drive. And that sucks. It really does. And I never say never. I started this story in 2017, and I abandoned it, and then I got pregnant and didn't write anything. But I just went back, almost 3 years later, and wrote it, and it became this massive novelette that's coming out on Tor.com in October. So sometimes I do go back to them. Sometimes I do rescue them from oblivion. But there are at least two, and there's one completely finished novel on my hard drive that we never could sell, called The Alchemy of Winter. So yeah, no, it happens. It doesn't happen much for me, but it does happen. as I go back through the Orphan's Tales, what characters have been the most fun to encounter again? Oh, Magadan's nice. Sigrid's fun. Grog and Tack and Sheepshead and Sheepshank and Turk's Head. They're all funny. I think probably just the city of Alinor, which I had forgotten most of the details about. I put a lot of love into that. And Beast. Beast is nice to see again. Beast and the Marsh King. And Lantern. I love all my babies. I could hardly choose. I'm glad you appreciate the YouTube archive. It is. I'm glad that I couldn't figure out Instagram and did it, because now they just exist there forever and anybody can watch them. So yeah. The online ecosphere is just such a strange place, and it hasn't changed in a number of years significantly, which is very different from the internet that I grew up with, where something like Friendster or MySpace or LiveJournal would just disappear frequently. But it's been, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and then like a fourth that kind of circulates in and out for a long time now. And so I guess ultimately I figured it wasn't worth resisting Instagram as hard as I had. But yeah, I mean... I'm not sure my face is my best feature to be putting on the internet, so I prefer to stick to my words for the most part. I kind of forgot about Tommy as well. I forgot to say when I was reading Tommy's chapters that any kind of lesbian energy you feel there is entirely intentional and correct and canon. In fact, if there's any queer energy you feel in any of my books, that is entirely correct and canon for the most part. So... I forgot to say that when we were reading it. But I do. These books have been. It's been such a journey back into sort of the deep history of me, and I've really enjoyed it. And I'm glad that you guys have, and I'm grateful that you've shared it with me. This is a random one, but given the chance, would I ever give a college commencement speech? I've done a high school commencement speech twice, and I loved it. I would absolutely do a college commencement speech. I really enjoy doing it. If you subscribe to my Patreon, actually, you can read the high school commencement speech, the first one that I gave, which I genuinely think is one of my best pieces of writing. I sort of pulled out all the stops for that because I did it for, I don't know if she's watching tonight, if Becca's watching, but for a girl that I met when she was 13, and I was touring for Fairyland, and we bonded over a lot of things, and I kind of, I don't like the word mentor, but I mentored her as best I could over the years, and she lobbied her school to invite me, and I came, and I really wanted to do right by her and her whole class and everything, and I wrote this thing, and I'm genuinely, as far as nonfiction goes, it's probably the best thing I've ever written, and it's up there with some of my fiction. I'm very proud of it. So I take it super seriously. I'm helping people to transition into a new phase of life. It's a very priestly thing to do, not in the sort of Catholic sense or that, but in a holy sense. You are being a village elder, and you are bringing the youth into adulthood. It's a very serious thing. So I love doing it, and I would absolutely do it for college kids as well. How long have I been teaching? I mean, technically, since I was a teenager, I'd made money as a professional tutor for a long time through college and everything. I love teaching. I teach whenever I'm given an opportunity to do so. It's fun. Everyone has to listen to what I say. It's very exciting. But I also just, I like to share knowledge. I intended to be a teacher before I sort of backed into being a writer. So I do love it, and I've been doing it as long as I've been doing anything, I suppose. Anybody else? I mean, teaching is just talking with a point. I mean, teaching the humanities anyway. It's a little different if you're teaching code, I suppose. I've been thinking about the Prester John books a lot lately. Apocalypse does that. Will you get the third? Yes. Yes, you will. Absolutely. When I finish the batch of books under contract right now, which has been backed up throughout my maternity leave and everything, the next thing is to do a Kickstarter for the third Prester John book. I am so sorry that it has taken this long. I really am. It's been a whole tangle of rights and publishers because, for those of you who don't know, the publishing company that published those books spectacularly exploded, taking many careers with it. And so we had to get the rights back, and then we'd really hoped for a long time to find another publisher that would be willing to do an omnibus edition that included the third book, and then that didn't work out. It's just been a long process of trying to find a home for it. And so ultimately I think the best thing to do is Kickstarter it, which we will do probably toward the end of summer. Also, like, I just don't really feel like doing a Kickstarter right now with everybody having such financial difficulties. I just don't think that's a great call. So sometime soon, when it's not the apocalypse and people might be interested in a Kickstarter. I know people have done Kickstarters during this time, and I hope that they've done well off of it, but like, I just feel like it's not the time. Yeah, so yeah, the rights were a mess, but I have the rights, and they're you know, the first two books are up on Kindle, and all of that goes to me now. That's my company that's putting them up on Kindle. So but I will do it. I will finish it, and I guarantee you, it'll be such a good book now, because I'm like so many years better a writer than I was when I was writing that series to begin with. So I promise it'll be worth the wait. Yeah, but you will. I would never leave you forever, but I realize I've left you for a lot longer than I intended to, and it's a huge cliffhanger ending in that second book. I'm very, very sorry. I guess maybe one of the stretch goals could be an omnibus edition. I would love to do that. It's a lot. It's harder than you think to find a publisher who wants to do an omnibus where two of the books have already been published and weren't that successful to begin with. So yeah, maybe we'll do that through the Kickstarter. At least we know we can do the audiobook in-house. Let me do my outro stuff. You can still ask questions if you want to, and I'll get to them after I say my name a bunch of times. Okay, you can find music based on these books at sjtucker.com. You guys can probably say this with me at this point. You can buy copies of these books anywhere books are sold. Please try to support your local independent booksellers. My local indie is printbookstore.com if you would like to support them. You can find me on Twitter at Kat Valenti. You can subscribe to my Patreon and read that commencement speech and a bunch of other things, which is also Kat Valenti. You can catch up with the archive anytime you like at Kat Valenti Live. They usually go up late at night after the reading. And you can, if you are so moved, put something in the tip jar on my Instagram profile or my YouTube profile or my website, which is katherinemvalenti.com. You don't have to, but it would mean the world to our little household in this garbage bullshit time of terrible things, also known as the introverts apocalypse. If you do toss a measly copper coin into the witch's hat, I will thank you by name on the next stream. What's tonight's lipstick? It's Fresh Moroccan Ass again. For those of you who've been for a while, it's not. It says Fresh Moroccan, and then it's A55 is the name of the color, and it just looks like Fresh Moroccan Ass, so that's what I call it. It's MAC Fresh Moroccan. But yeah, and I'll find a really good dramatic lipstick to wear for the final night. I'm not sure what it'll be, but I'll find something good. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I will see you tomorrow at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Same fairy tale time, same fairy tale channel, and Tuesday will be the conclusion. Thanks a lot, everyone. I'll see you later. Bye. Stay safe.